led to this.
So was it that having in Nigeria was not possible, or it was just that it was not put together in the right way?
Well, I must tell you that Nigeria is a beautiful country. Having Nigeria was one of the best things that could ever have happened to Africa.
Okay.
That's the truth. Because before now, we've had Nigeria as the giant of Africa. Before now, we've had Nigeria talking about our military forces. Our military forces happens to be one of the best military forces, land forces in the world. Talking about our military architecture, talking about our intellectual capacity of the Niger area, that's Nigeria. Yes, it's second to none. Talking about our natural resources, brilliant ideas. That was what brought together this entity called Nigeria. But for me, I would like to say greed, selfishness, bad leadership, the lack of transparency, lack of accountability, lack of the fear of God, brought us to this place where it now looks like as if Nigeria was a mistake. The days of the regional Nigeria, we didn't have all of this to mess with. When Southwest was going at their pace, when the Yorubas were going at their pace, when the Igbos were going at their pace, when the Hausas were going at their pace, we didn't have all of this problem. But the very attempt to give leadership to the Hausas and give education to us and give business to the Southeasterners and all of that was where we started this problem from. That's how we got here. So Nigeria is a beautiful thing, but managing that Nigeria is the problem.
So now that we understand that Nigeria is something that it's hard to manage, so why do you think it has been hard to manage after several efforts by several governments? Because we have several governments coming and go, and it looks like no one has the capacity to manage the country.
Well, I must say that President Olusegun Obasanjo managed our diversities to an extent.
Okay.
After President Olusegun Obasanjo, when Yar'Adua took over, he did also manage our diversities to an extent. Goodluck Jonathan also did manage diversities to an extent. The inception of the war, now I'll say division war, or the war against the country Nigeria, started during the Goodluck Jonathan's dispensation, but it didn't start as a war against Nigeria. It started as a war against Western education by the Boko Haram sect. There had always been other farmers' crises far back as 1999. But Obasanjo, one way or the other, was able to manage it. And we really didn't hear that particular crisis in Goodluck Jonathan's administration. But we are hearing all of it now in this administration. When President Olusegun Obasanjo was going to get into office as president, it was more like a compensation plan for MKO Abiola in 1993. So the Southwest really didn't have a reason to want to agitate. The handing over of the presidency to Northern Nigeria in 2015 was as a result of the South having led on 2 occasions, so we want to give it to the North so as to create a fair balance.
Okay.
So I must tell you that it's not like they've not been able to manage it, but like I said, this administration, this is the worst of it. So it is this administration in particular that had not been able to manage Nigeria's diversity in 8 years. In fact, all what we are saying is the ripple effect of 8 years. If you can rewind as far as 2015, the worst we had was the case of Chibok girls. I remember that yesterday, April the 14th, was 8 years anniversary of Chibok girls. You understand? So that's to tell you that it's under this administration that we've really had it at its worst. Goodluck Jonathan started it, but Buhari shattered it. That's the idea. Buhari just came and spoiled the whole thing completely. And I must tell you that I might not also fault him, because a good number of Nigerians went to the ballot with the plan that, General Muhammadu Buhari, a retired general, will be able to handle the security issues of this country. So we were in safe hands in 2015. But rather than undo the security, that security now even led to division. Because some ethnic groups believe that, we are the ones at the center, so we have a place we can run to. And that was the inception of this division that found ourselves. So to answer that your question, we've had administrations that have managed it, maybe not perfectly well, because even during President Olusegun Obasanjo's administration, we had the people that were still fighting the Ojukus, that's the Igbos. They still had their Ojuku agitations, even though it was not loud. Even during Goodluck Jonathan's regime, he had a way of managing the Niger Delta boys, the militants. He had a way of managing them by giving them regular payments, and all of that. And that's why the likes of the Okubo could not say anything again and all of that. But this administration is completely out of it.
So let's talk about this current administration. Yeah. Like you made mention, people thought general it should be, and beyond that, this is someone who had been in administration way back as 1970s, 1980s, and all have thought that he knew better. Well, what do you think caused a sort of incapability on his own part to manage the nation?
With all due respect to our dear president, I believe so much in regarding people in position of authority and power.
Okay.
So with that established, I would want to mention that these words I'll probably say on this particular note are not with respect to trying to disrespect him as a person, but they are only born out of the failures of this present-day administration. So in that vein, I'd love to answer that question. I was watching a particular interview on Politics Today, Seun Okinbaloye, where he was interviewing one of the youngest presidential aspirants, and he asked that person a question. What do you think is the cause of the Nigerian problem? And you know his answer? He said Buhari. And I laughed. And I was like,
Like, seriously?
So Buhari. So Seun Okinbaloye then said, explain to me how is Buhari. And he said, since Buhari lost his mental capacity to be able to manage this nation, he lost it all. At that moment, the Nigerian part of me felt like, you're not supposed to insult our president like that. Why would you say our president does not have the mental capacity? And Seun Okinbaloye said, President Muhammadu Buhari is the one in the Aso Villa and all of that. But would you fault a Nigerian that thinks that way? How will you be a father of a house and your wife suddenly leaves home and says she wants her own home? Your first child leaves home and says he wants his own. The second child leaves home and says he wants his own. The third child leaves home and says he wants his own. Don't you understand that there is a problem with you not being able to harmonize your home as the head of the family? So, what exactly went wrong under President Muhammadu Buhari's administration? Sincerely yours, I don't know. But if there's something I can preempt went wrong, it's not the mental capacity of our Mr. President, but I think it's the ability to carry out actions as expected. That's the problem. So it's not about the willpower to think or know what is going wrong. It's about the willpower to carry out corresponding actions that would arrest situations. Now you might want to ask me why I'm saying the willpower to act. When APC was going to have their recently concluded national convention, suddenly from nowhere, Buni and his deputy had issues. Governor Rufai came out and said, Mr. President said Buni's tenure is over. When Buni traveled for a medical trip, that the second person, maybe Sani Bello, I really can't remember his name, should take over. That's the governor of Niger State, should take over. And suddenly, Buhari spoke from London and said, no way. Let Governor Buni complete that tenure as the caretaker chairman, and all positions will be by consensus. And he further went on to say all governors should comply with his directive as the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So if the president can come out from nowhere and pass such an authority, grandstandingly saying that this is what I want and all of you must be compelled to follow the instruction that I'm giving you, then you understand that Mr. President is not lost on what is happening. Mr. President knows what is happening, but he has probably decided not to act like he did during the APC convention. He was there at the Eagle Square in Abuja at National Convention. He sat down. Some aspirants were crying on the stage. It didn't stop the fact that consensus must hold. Even in the position of the national woman leader that led to so much fracas, they had to eventually comply to consensus. So that's to tell you that the Mr. President knows but has refused to act. So me, I want to run under the guise of mental capacity. Maybe Mr. President is old. Maybe he's not too hands-on with some things, but I know that he knows. But I think the problem is when you surround yourself with people like you, you would have a problem. So you cannot go beyond the people that are your think tank. That is where I think the problem is. Very recently, the president granted an interview. He had an interview with Jim Okebaloye of Channels TV, and he was asked